Hockey Talk Show on a Tuesday, and thanks for being here. Hockey Talk Show on a Tuesday, and thanks for being here with us. Number live at 631-438-1768. Your old pal Lance doing pretty all right. Pretty right on the day. On the day-o-meter. On the day tracker. Thumbs up all around. Thumbs up all around. Eddie V, welcome to the show, man. Good to have you as always. We're excited down here in the States, especially in the New York area, because something that we haven't had in about 3 years or so, our New York Islanders are back, and we are so very, very excited. I mean, so very excited. Was I out of phase there a little bit? I had my little guy in here today. It's always trouble when the 2-year-old is running through the studio. It's not a good thing. Not a good thing. I don't let him in this room for the most part. And, of course, he was touching everything. He doesn't feel good, so I'm trying to, give the kid a little leeway, and never a good thing. Never a good thing. But, again, it was a good day. I was celebrating. We were celebrating a little bit. Let me give you the rundown of the day, for me, personally, quickly here. Islanders moving back to Long Island, and we're going to get into it in a big way. I bought a car today. My wife and I purchased a car, her first new vehicle. She's very excited. I'm very excited for her. Got a rumor that The Office was coming back to television. How about this? Hollywood Reporter reported this morning that The Office may be coming back to NBC for live shows. Not live shows, for new episodes, I should say. Not live shows. I mean, how exciting is that? That's kind of thrilling. That's what she said. I'm really thrilled about it. So The Office, car, Islanders coming back. There was one other bit of good news. I can't remember what it was now. I think there was something else that happened. I don't know. It'll come to me. We're going to cover everything with the New York Islanders at length here. We're also going to talk about the New York Rangers getting a bit of good news today as well. We did have a trade in the National Hockey League today. Actually, we had two, and we got a couple of milestones and things to get into, and we will go through all of it right here on the Hockey Talk Show. Craig, welcome to the show, man. Psyched about the Islanders in a big way, and let's start right there. And honestly, I want to start with Chris Botta. Now, it's funny because I haven't spoken with Chris in some time, but when I worked for the New York Islanders, I worked with Chris. He had been the press guy over at the New York Islanders for many, many years. And, and speaking of which, he just tweeted out an article that he wrote. So maybe we'll delve into that too. Chris had been with the team for a really long time through all the super bad years, the fisherman years and all that. He was nice enough to hire me. He actually wasn't the first one. A young lady by the name of Jamie hired me as an intern, and then I eventually went on to get a position there. And I spent one of the lockout seasons working with Chris closely on the Arena Football League, the New York Dragons, who played out of Nassau Coliseum and was owned by the Islander owner Charles Wong at the time. And I also did a couple of Bridgeport Sound Tigers game. You guys will have to remind me to tell you the stories of that season, because there were literally times where I would just get a phone call from Chris and he'd be like, because we were essentially I was part-time during that time frame. I wouldn't get an actual position with the team until hockey came back the year later. But, I was part-time and I was essentially we'll get into the story one day. It's complicated. I was hired, then I was let go. It was a weird thing. But essentially, we were all sort of like skeleton crew, and I'd just get calls from him and be like, listen, talks are really heating up. I think we're going to be back. Can you be in on Tuesday? And I'm like, you got to let me know, because I got to quit another job, because I was doing both. I was working during the day, the other gig. And then at night I was, at the Coliseum, and I was doing things, and Sundays with the games and all that stuff. So, in fact, I remember, just to get into it quickly, I remember when the Bridgeport Sound Tigers came and played some games at the Coliseum during the lockout, and how just refreshing it was. Do you remember how frustrating that was to not have hockey for that whole entire time? I mean, it was like just never endingly, just like draining. It just stunk. I hated it, But we got a couple games in anyway. But he would call me and he would be like, "Look, I hear we're And I'd be like, oh my God. And that happened like 6 or 7 times that year. Like 6 or 7 times we thought, like, this is it. They were like ramping up, like, getting offices together. And then, you'd hear things like, it would be like Saturday night, and you'd hear, look, Tuesday we're back in business. Like, the league starts. Like, they put in a plan, and this is when it did the date, and blah, blah, blah. And this is it. And then nothing, it was just so endlessly frustrating. So I do want to start with Chris Botta, because I feel like his tweet encapsulates sort of the feeling of the fans everywhere who have been sitting with this team for quite some time and have been dying to get a new building, and the Islanders are. And this is the tweet from Chris Botta. Congrats to Isles and their fans. Biggest day for the team in a generation. Ledecky and Malkin's wisest step was knowing they couldn't do it alone. A collaboration with Wilpon, Dolan, Lewicki, Azoff, Luco, and others, and deep connections to Cuomo got it done. And that was essentially what happened. So here's the news for you formally. The New York Islanders, we had Randy Marshall on the other day from Newsday, and she spoke extensively on this request for a proposal, where Belmont Park is, where the Belmont Stakes take place, the third part in the Triple Crown for the Racing Association. There's quite a bit of land there, and it's been underdeveloped. In fact, those of you who live here in the tri-state area, like me, that a lot of that land has been basically a parking lot for car dealerships. All the car dealerships in the area, because the area is so congested, their lots aren't that big. So they've been parking cars in this space. And for whatever reason, somebody finally decided, well, this is like a multi-billion-billion-dollar area. Why don't we put some use to this land that's just basically a big parking lot for new car dealers? And so that's what they did. So they put an RFP out, a request for proposal, essentially saying, hey, if you would like to redevelop this area, send us your ideas, your proposal, and we'll evaluate it and we'll award it to somebody. 3 parties initially responded. This was after another long, arduous process with the Cosmos. Another soccer team had dragged on for 4 years and essentially gone nowhere. So 3 parties got in. 2 parties eventually were down. It was down to 2. They were the ones who submitted something. It moved extraordinarily quickly. We've been talking about that. And we went from we'll know soon to we'll know in sometime in 3 weeks to we'll know Wednesday. And now we have the scoop for you that the Islanders will indeed tomorrow, from an announcement from New York Governor Cuomo, be awarded the RFP. They'll be awarded that land. The Oakview partnership that they've put together with Fred Wilpon of the New York Mets and James Dolan of the New York Rangers and Tim Lewicki of Oakview and Irving Azoff, his partner, the music mogul, and a bunch of others. So that will happen. So what Islander fans have been waiting for and battling for years, you heard Chris say, a generation, is now coming to fruition. They will get the land, and I'm sure shortly they will announce their plans for the arena. They're already done because they had to submit them for the RFP. We haven't seen them outside of, it is a 18,000 seat arena, but I'm sure we'll get the fine-tuned points relatively soon. But as of right now, we don't know any of the details, other than tomorrow, Governor Cuomo is going to have a press conference and he is going to announce that the New York Islanders team was awarded the land, and that they will start developing that land all in one piece, which is just like, honestly, I feel like, this was similar to the feeling I got when I found out my first kid was going to be a boy. Just relief, just years and years of relief. So if you were out playing shinny, that's the news you missed. The Islanders tomorrow, and again, we kind of got a little bit of the inside scoop here, although it's everywhere now in the metro area. I'm sure it'll hit national news tomorrow. But Governor Cuomo will announce that he's going to award the New York Islanders group the land, and they are going to start development on that land. And like we talked about when Randy Marshall was on the show, here's a look at that property. Essentially, you can see the Belmont grandstand right here. Here's the actual racetrack itself. This is the paddock area, which I personally have had some parties and barbecues and friend gatherings, and it's just really nice. All this land in here was all this sort of just like, picnic table, and, come bring some burgers and steaks down, and you can grill it up, and, you could lay some towels down and some chairs and have a nice little day at the track. They have all these, they have all like TVs and things back here, so you can see the races, and they have terminals back here so you can bet. So you really don't have to even walk inside the park. You can literally just spend the day in a park setting while gambling at the same time. It's kind of nice. I'm not going to lie to you. For somebody who, formerly had a gambling problem, and formerly, I mean, now up to the minute, it was a cool thing to have. So, this is a major highway here in the area. It's Cross Island Parkway. It connects, as you can tell, across the island, and and this is all housing in here, down here, and up here. And this whole land is all essentially just blank parking lot. And this is where they were, parking the cars. And it would be a huge parking area because all this overflow, there's parking here and everything, but all this overflow from the Belmont Stakes, you're putting 100-something thousand people into the, the middle of the field of the Belmont Stakes. Especially when there's a Triple Crown runner. So they would need this sort of area. But then they kind of realized, well, they can plunk something down here and still have a whole ton of parking, especially if it comes with the renovated Long Island Railroad. Encourage more people to just take some things down, take the public transportation down, and they can get the best of both worlds and utilize this area more times in a year. So that's what essentially they have wound up doing. So it's an exciting time for Islanders fans. So much like when we went over this with Randy Marshall of Newsday, you can see over here they have an innovation incubator community space area. This was a big part of the plan. And by the way, and let me just say this too, as somebody that was a member of the organization and really spent a not like I ever spent one-on-one personal time with Charles Wang, but with Chris and with everybody else that was trying to get a deal done and get that team out of the Coliseum or build a new building. The original plans were to redevelop the entire Coliseum site, put apartments and offices and medical things, and they had this whole huge plan, huge hotel. It was a disaster. They scaled it all back, still tried. They couldn't do it. Then they just tried to just flat out do an arena. They couldn't do that. It was just loss after loss after loss for the organization. And it was sad to see. And it took its toll on Charles Wang and the organization itself too, and the fan base. It really, really did. So to see this come to fruition is really lovely. And the other thing that I want to add into this, especially at this moment, is, they were talking about really developing the land around the Coliseum to be something that would be really usable and viable, not only for the community, but also for sports. And they were talking about, putting in sports therapy colleges and, just laboratories and things where they can experiment and figure out, ways to better, do athlete training. And there were all these wonderful futuristic and hopeful plans in the process, and it never got done. So to be here all these years later and see them actually get an arena with the retail that they wanted and the hotel that they wanted and, mixed use space is really great. And I think that's partially where this innovation incubator community space is born out of. Like, they literally just cordon off this whole area right here as let's leave a little something for the community, for the future, for like whatever they determine it to be, whether it's a cancer research facility or it's sports, an athletic injury research, whatever it is, it will be, a community kitchen or a small business kitchen, whatever they decide it's going to be. And it's just, for me personally, as a fan of the game, as a fan of the team, it's nice to see that. It's nice to see that was carried over into the plans. So you'll see the big parking area here, lots of trees as a border for these homes that are in here. Great access to the parkways in and out. It's important to have that. Hempstead Turnpike is not a highway, but it's a very, very large throughway, if you will, as far as a road goes. And that'll split the parking lot. There'll be a pedestrian tunnel here that goes over, so you don't have to worry about anything. And there'll be a nice little retail village around the arena, restaurants and shops and things, which makes this totally a year-round and viable property. And then the arena itself, which not only will host the New York Islanders, but it'll also host concerts and, I'm sure Disney on Ice and, the Ice Capades and all that stuff. There's an entertainment plaza and a hotel, municipal drop-off for cabs and whatnot, and of course the Long Island Railroad platform, which is right over here, which is a big part of this proposal, and the Islanders getting it because they're turning that, which is essentially a part-time stop right now, because they really don't need it that often, only when the horses are running. That'll turn that into a full-time station, which is really, really good. So I'm very, very happy for the Islanders and their team and the Oakview group. By the way, 2 huge victories for the Oakview group. Not only have they gotten this big win in the New York area, which they're going to should make a good amount of money on. They got the arena through in Seattle, and already the vote of confidence from Gary Bettman on them getting a franchise there. So great news all around. Again, this is all not official until tomorrow, but we expect Governor Cuomo sometime in the morning, 9-10 o'clock like that, to be on site and announce that the Islanders essentially, or New York Arena partners, have won the bid for the Belmont Park space. 18,000 seat arena, 150 events annually, as well as a 435,000 square foot space for retail. Hotel with 200 to 250 rooms, 10,000 square foot innovation center that would be developed with resident input. So that's another great part. All these neighbors will get to decide what exactly it is they want to go over there. If I had my say, maybe not necessarily for the Innovation Center, but maybe just in general, what I would like to see in there, Chili's. I like to see a Chili's, 2 for $20, baby. I want to get in there with a 2 for $20 and then be in my seat on time to watch the puck drop. I think that would be the way to go. I do want my baby back. So congratulations to the New York Islanders on that. It's a great day for the franchise. It's a great day for the NHL. Again, 3 franchises in the New York area. The ad revenue, not just for television, but on site, promotional exposure, being in the number 1 market. It is hugely important for that to take place. And I know what you're thinking, like the Giants and the Yanks. The Giants can put 45,000 people in the stadium on the weekend, and that's where it's at. For hockey to compete with that, you need 3 franchises with 16, 17,000 seats apiece just to, come together and figure that out. Now, granted, hockey plays more games than football does, and they're 2 different things, but it's just part of the footprint. It's what you need. 2 basketball teams, 3 hockey teams, 2 baseball teams. Let's not lie to each other. The New York area can get another football team and or hockey team and be just fine. They could. We really splitting things up, but it's big enough area to do that. But it's essentially what you need. They have the three here, the Long Island and the New Jersey and the whole thing. It's just great for the National Hockey League. It really, really is. So good for them. Congratulations to all the current employees and former employees. And I'm just really excited for the new owners who figured out a better way to go about this than Charles Wang, who tried his heart out to make this happen for the longest time and just could never get it done. I honestly, never in my life have I felt worse for a billionaire. God's honest truth, really. A sweet, genuine guy. You go to any hospital in the New York area, especially on Long Island, and there's a Charles Wang surgery center or wing or what. I mean, the guy was just very generous to this area and didn't deserve the treatment that he received as an owner of the franchise. And it was just really sad to see. The Toronto Maple Leafs put a beating on the Carolina Hurricanes this afternoon, 8-1, special 2:00 game for the franchise. I'm sure all the kiddies who got out of school to celebrate the first 100 years of the National Hockey League, this was part of the celebration. The 100th anniversary of the first games played in the NHL. Of course, back then it was Toronto and Carolina. Carolina didn't exist. Excuse me. I don't know if you guys heard, my little thing just popped here. My little beverage. But they got together this afternoon and played a heck of a game. By the way, as the Leafs piled on 8 goals, in the midst of that, they scored their 20,000th. They have 20,000 goals as a franchise. How do you say that? 20,000th goal. Sounds funny. In franchise history, 20,000 goals came on the power play, 10:34, the first period, when James Van Riemsdyk scored to give the Maple Leafs a 3-1 lead over the Carolina Hurricanes in the next century game. That's what they called it. The game that came exactly 100 years after the Toronto Arenas lost 10-9 to the Montreal Wanderers in one of 2 games played on the NHL's first night. So pretty cool that happened. And we'll bring this up here so you guys can see the Toronto Maple Leafs did indeed don the Toronto Arenas jerseys this afternoon to play the game. So very cool that happened. Bringing back the old Arenas jersey. I like that. Very, very nice. It's a shame the Canadians didn't wear a Montreal Wanderers jersey. That would have been nice to see. But then again, they could have also worn a Hartford Wanderers jersey, and it would have been probably a little bit more funny, actually. Maybe not all that amusing to my pals over in Connecticut, but a Hartford Wanderers jersey, that would have given me a chuckle if they actually wore that. Yeah, Toronto Arenas and Montreal Wanderers 100 years ago today. So pretty special day for the National Hockey League, for sure. The guy right here on your screen throwing a rear end into Ryan Getzlaf, that would be Mika Zibanejad, who will be in the lineup tonight when the puck drops for the Rangers and the Ducks at Madison Square Garden in about 3 minutes or so. Yeah, realistically, it's like 10. They always drag those out. Let's get into the trade today. There you see Oleksak going from Dallas to the Pittsburgh Penguins this afternoon for a conditional 4th-round draft pick. Nice little pickup for Pittsburgh. 6'7" defenseman, 255, Stars first-round draft pick in 2011. And you see 6 years of not really been able to cut the mustard. So he goes for a 4th-round draft pick. Stars will receive the better of Pittsburgh's own 4th-round picks or a choice acquired from the Minnesota Wild. That's one of the conditions in the scenario right there. So that is a pretty nice little pickup for Pittsburgh. Of course, the Penguins weren't done right there. They went on to make another move. Jim Rutherford wasn't satisfied, so he traded Josh Archibald, goaltender Sean McGuire, and a 6th-round pick in 2019 to the Arizona Coyotes for Michael Leighton and a 2019 4th-round draft pick. So picking up another 4th after sending one over to Dallas for Oleksiak, I think is his name. And wound up getting another one back for a 6th and a couple of players that are in the minors. I think by all accounts, everybody realizes that the Pens won the Dallas trade, and Michael Leighton is just going to be a bit of insurance for them in the goalie spot moving forward. You want to have that depth there. Tristan Jarry maybe not impressing them as much. So, Jim Rutherford deciding I'm going to just shore up my goaltending and bring in Michael Leighton here. It's interesting to me that Michael Leighton was chosen because out of the just massive amounts of goaltenders that are just floating around the hockey universe right now, it's very interesting that Michael Leighton was chosen first. I'm not saying it's bad or he didn't deserve it. I find it interesting. Out of all the guys who I see, and they're all kind of even, they're all kind of like, backups, maybe not backups, but maybe not backups. That Michael Leighton was the one that Jim Rutherford decided I'm going to go out and I'm going to get that guy right there. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Hockey Talk Show with you here on a Tuesday. We're talking about some of the trades that were executed in the National Hockey League today. By the way, trade freeze tonight at midnight, so we could see a flurry of activity, although as we get into the 7 o'clock start, I wouldn't necessarily guess that would happen, but you never know. Some West Coast teams before their games, still possible, still pretty possible. By the way, the trade freeze is actually a movement freeze. So teams aren't going to be able to send players down if it requires waivers or anything like that. So there was a bunch of other activity. The Blue Jackets sent Tyler Mott down to the AHL. Sharks sent Marcus Sorensen down. The Oilers called up Anton Slepyshev and placed Oscar Klefbom on the IR, and they waived Nathan Walker. That's the Australian kid, if I'm not mistaken, who they just pick him up and acquire him from the Caps? I think that was the kid. Yeah, I think Nathan Walker is the Australian kid. So Nathan Walker can't stick in Edmonton either. The Oilers did actually make a deal too. They traded Greg Chase to the Panthers for future considerations. So minor deal there. There was actually a flurry of activity yesterday. Blackhawks sending Ville Polka down to the AHL. Golden Knights called up Thomas Heika. Where was the other one that I was really surprised at? Oh, Arizona sent Dylan Strome down to the AHL. I was pretty surprised by that. I was really surprised by that. What do you think of the trades today? Let me know in the comments. Eddie thinks that the Pens won out in this deal. Well, they didn't really have to give up much to get a defenseman, a little bit of defensive depth. I would like to see them, they're still searching for that third line center. Who is the guy I want to say Bannon. That's not his name. That's the presidential guy. Who is the guy that was the center for the Pens and they just lost him this year? What's his name? He's part of the HBK line. He was the B in the HBK line. Losing my mind. Can't remember anything anymore. Anyway, he was letting him go was a mistake for the Pens. I know that they were worried about, salary cap and all that stuff, but letting him go, Nick Bonino, it was not Beavis. It was Nick Beavis. Nick Bonino, they've never been able to replace him. He was a great third line center. That HBK line was pretty damn good. Why they let that go, I'll never know. But the Pens are still in search for a little bit more strength down the middle. Daniel, thank you. It was Bonino. Although Beavis did make me laugh. So they still have to figure that out. And I have a feeling that the trade deadline this year is going to be a little crazy. I just have a feeling that it's going to be crazy. I think you have teams that weren't expecting to be in like the Devils and the Golden Knights. You know, they weren't projected to be there. And I think you also have teams like, you know, Arizona and Buffalo especially, and Montreal, teams that thought they were going to be there. Maybe not Arizona, but Buffalo, I think thought. I think Buffalo thought they were going to be there, but I didn't, and a bunch of people didn't. A lot of people didn't, but I think they thought they were going to be there. I think they were really excited about Housley coming in and all the deals that they had made. I think they were excited. I really do. But your Buffaloes, Montreal, you know, Carolina, if they wind up missing, it's hard to tell, you know, who's going to miss and who's going to not. But it's going to be interesting to see. And I think a lot of the uncertainty and a lot of the teams in the middle is going to have everybody going on garage sales to the teams on the bottom, trying to see what they can snag up from, you know, a team on an off year. And like I said, like the Devils and the Knights, they're going to probably want to add, not thinking that they were going to be in it or nobody really picking them to be in it. I just think it's going to be a really, really busy and active trade deadline this year. I just do. Just has that feeling to it, you know, like the buzz on trades has been more this year than ever before. So I just feel like it's going to all come to a head. I honestly thought we were going to pick up maybe another deal or two, but as of right now, we have nothing. Official roster freeze is 11:59 tonight, and it doesn't unfreeze until 12:01 on December 28th. So it's an 8-day span where players can't be traded, waived, or loaned. You can't loan a player to the AHL or CHL or wherever you're going to. I don't think anybody can loan to CHL at this point. But that's essentially so nobody gets traded in the middle of the hockey season. You know, that's just depressing. Again, you know, imagine you're home enjoying Christmas with your family. You get a call from the accounting firm you work at, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Bill, we moved you to the opposing accounting firm down the road. Yeah, it was good, though. We got a Keurig in return and future considerations. So we're pretty excited about it. Pretty excited." Daniel, I thought Buffalo would be closer than this. I did too. I didn't peg them to make the playoffs. I did not peg them to be like embarrassingly bad like they are. I'm with you on that, man. I am with you on that. I didn't think they were going to be this bad. And they really, really turned out to be. But I mean, literally right now. And by the way, if you want to know why the Penguins made some deals today, take a look at the standings. They're on the outside looking in. That cannot happen if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you're the defending Stanley Cup champions, you cannot miss the playoffs next year. I don't care you won 2 in a row. I don't care that you've played more hockey than any other team because you've had shortened summers because you won twice. They're all legitimate excuses, but nobody is going to want to hear that if they miss the playoffs this year. And it is entirely possible, as you can see by the standings right now. They are 2 points behind the Islanders and the Rangers for the final wild card spot. And behind them is Philly and Carolina and Montreal. And that's what I'm talking about. Detroit, I think, is going to be sellers at the deadline. Like, you're going to have Ottawa. I think you're going to have a lot of these teams that are going to be sellers. And while we're on Ottawa, and again, I hate how much time we've been dedicating to the Ottawa Senators on the show, but it's true. When you have names floating around like Erik Karlsson's name is going to be, especially moving into the deadline, which is crazy because he has a year left on his deal, I think we're going to see a huge flurry of activity come the trade deadline. But as of right now, teams have about 4 hours and 52 minutes to pull off a deal if that's what they want to do. You guys are up to date on all the hockey news in the world. 20,000th goal for the Toronto Arenas today. Wearing the jerseys. Couple of trades, new destination for Alexiak, and the Islanders now have an arena to call their own. I know Isles fans are going to be super excited to see the plans and what this thing is really going to look like. But by the way, it is an 18,000 seat arena, so forget about the old Coliseum at 16,000 seats. This will be 2,000 seats larger. This is going to be a big player. Huge player. I will say this. And I will say this right now, and I might be the only one saying this right now, but the Barclay Center is in trouble. And so is the Nassau Coliseum. Just so you guys know the behind the scenes on this, why the Oakview Group got involved, Tim Leiweke, and why Jim Dolan and the Mets were involved, because you have essentially two companies here. You have the company that runs the Barclay Center. They also want a contract to renovate the Coliseum and run that, and that's what they're doing right now. And they made the dumb mistake of just renovating it and not really making it larger or making any improvements to it. So that's why the Islanders aren't going back there, versus Jim Dolan and Madison Square Garden and the Beacon Theater and all the other, and the theater at Madison Square Garden and all the other venues that he owns. So now he has a second partner in Long Island. So those two are going to clearly be working together against the Coliseum and the Barclay Center. So it's really like Garden Coliseum, Barclay Center, and then, Coliseum versus Belmont. So they're going to really be at war with one another. And Jim Dolan has been on the side, and again, being involved with Irving Azoff here, is really on the better side of things, because if you're unaware of how the entertainment space works, and again, I can speak to this because of my radio experience in the mornings, Live Nation and AEG, all these companies are lining up and picking, their little battles. They're buying up venues and they're running concerts to be, as opposed to one another. So that's also what's at play here, and why Dolan lines up with this arena, because he wants it in his portfolio. So what essentially is happening is, let's just take U2, for example. When U2 goes down the road, Live Nation goes to them and says, no problem, U2, 30 dates, US, whatever you want to play. You'll play this one, this one, and this one, and this one. And they already have their arenas. So they'll play Madison Square Garden and not play the Barclays Center, because they also want to play the Staples Center in Los Angeles and not the old, whatever the old arena is over there, the Forum in Los, so they line things up. It's so crazy in the touring industry right now that there's only one large arena in London. And for bands, if they want to play the big arena in London, as opposed to playing the smaller venues 3 or 4 times, they have to then agree to play Madison Square Garden and the Forum or the state. I forget what the lineups are, but I mean, it literally is like a monopolistic two companies warring at each other to get an edge in the entertainment business. And so that's why it's important that this arena is built, because it gives Dolan's company a little bit more of a stronger hold in the city. Book Billy Joel for day one. Kiss can open up for Billy Joel. I don't know about Kiss opening up for Billy Joel, especially what my man is under, and he's not my man. I don't like him at all. The tongue guy. Oh, he's facing some allegations these days. Part of the Harvey Weinstein train. But anyway, so there's that whole other entertainment part of it too, that this actually strengthens Madison Square Garden and doesn't weaken it, because they're setting out to weaken the other two arenas. And I don't know how the Coliseum can function, because it's tiny. At least with Brooklyn, you have the Nets as a tenant, but they're going to be definitely getting squeezed out as far as, concerts go. And the ice capades and all that stuff. That's going to be a big deal. So there's that, and it's easier when you have a bigger arena. You can go to the ice capades and say, well, we can sell 18,000 tickets, and the Garden can sell 18,000 tickets. That's 36,000 tickets you have you can get a piece of, as opposed to, 16,000 in Nassau Coliseum. And I don't know what the Barclays Center holds, but they're going to, 1,000 seats is going to be a big deal. It's going to edge them out. So that's the whole other little aspect of this. We'll get more from New York Governor Cuomo tomorrow, and we'll be back again, of course, 5 Live all week. Wednesday's show, we'll talk Islanders. We'll wrap up any trade freeze movement here, and we'll get a little bit into, probably, I'm thinking, without really knowing what happens tomorrow or tonight, we'll, of course, wrap up tonight's news, but we'll probably get into maybe the outdoor game a little bit as another episode of Road to the Winter Classic comes up. So I hope you guys are watching it. We didn't really talk about the first episode yet because I wanted to give everybody time to watch it. So Maybe we'll dip into that a little bit on tomorrow's show. Remember to hit that like button. Let everybody know that you saw this episode. Share it around if you can. If you're on the podcast, rate and review. And it's been a pleasure talking hockey with you guys tonight. Appreciate all the comments as always.